Hello, everyone. My name is Jackson Fisk, and my company is Goal Zero, the simple way to manage safety. We offer turnkey compliance and remote management for all your safety needs. Welcome to Zero Hour, a live broadcast show where we talk to business owners, professionals in different industries, and non-for-profits, all in the hopes to help educate those who need it and maybe learn something. So today's guest is Brent Guidinger. Brent is the manager of business development for the United Way of the Alberta Capital Region. He has worked in the local non-for-profit sector for nearly 10 years and is passionate about bringing people and organizations together to create lasting solutions for those struggling in poverty in our city. The United Way Alberta Capital Region is a local charity that works collaboratively with local non-for-profits, government, and community-minded organizations to look at the big picture in their mission to create pathways out of poverty for individuals and families in the Alberta region. So with that, let's get to it. Brent, how's it going, man?
Jackson, I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad, buddy. Did I butcher your intro?
You nailed it. You
Perfect.
nailed it. 95% of people can't handle the phonetics of my last name, but you did it a marvelous job.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm like, well, it's bad when you just like are bad at English to begin with. I'll be like, I screw up my own name sometimes. I'll be like, wait, that's not it.
I'm there with you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join me today. This is episode 10 of Zero Hour. So, took a bit of time off in the summer and, trying to get back into it. So thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for inviting me on. This is a privilege. And we're number 10. We've made double digits. Fantastic.
Yeah, it hasn't fizzled out yet. So that's cool. It's something I really enjoy doing. And as long as someone gets something out of this that's educational and helpful, we'll keep doing it. So, and as long as people still want to keep talking to me, that's also a bonus.
Right on. Well, congrats on making it to 10. That's great.
Yeah, thanks, man. So, the United Way, there's a lot, like everyone has heard of the United Way, more or less, right? Like you've heard about it. There's so many non-for-profits out there. But the United Way is it's that big one that you hear of. Like, I know I used to go to jobs and the United Way is built right into the pay structure of like oil and gas companies. Right. And so that's how I've known about it. But can you tell me some history and background on the United Way?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, you're right. United Way is a global brand when it comes to nonprofits. But the United Way that I work for here in the Alberta Capital Region, it's a local independently run charity. So we have our own board of directors, our own local team here in town. We focus on local issues. The same can be said with other United Ways in other cities as well. But the history really started, back in the late 1800s, actually, and really I think got going during World War I. Really, when there was a lot of different efforts to bring communities together to sort of help different people out who were struggling in the community, whether it was with emergency relief, whether it was with counseling or just general well-being. And there was a lot of kind of different moving parts, and so they kind of needed to have more coordinated efforts around that. During it started in Colorado, the United Way movement, and it was really about responding to community needs in a concerted, coordinated effort that was efficient and effective and got the resources to the people that really were most in need. So when you think of World War I, a lot of efforts were made to help those in the community, and the United Way was seen as sort of a war chest to sort of collect the funds that were needed to help those folks, but also coordinate the different efforts that were needed as well. So that's really how the movement got started. And then in the Alberta Capital Region here, which some folks may know it better as the Edmonton Metro region. We started in the mid 40s. So we just had our 75th anniversary not too long ago. So we've had an active part here on the local level for many decades. And so we focus on poverty here in the Alberta Capital Region. We made that decision a number of years ago that we're going to focus our efforts on ending poverty in the Alberta Capital Region. So a little bit of history there, and a little bit of kind of connection as to the kind of the global big United Way brand, but also how it looks on a local level as well.
Well, absolutely. Even saying that, I didn't know that there was a distinguished, there was a global brand and then there was a local brand, right? I just thought it was more like, okay, here's a chapter, or almost like a union, I guess. But I didn't think you operated differently.
Independently, yeah.
Independently, yeah. So, yeah, that's unique in itself. So when you're working when the United Way, say, an oil company like Suncor, CNRL, you get hired on, they say, you can garnish your wages or donate right off your paycheck, right? It's an effective way to do that, right? Because most people or workers go, okay, they either want to give back or they don't.
Right.
Does that go to the local region, or would that go to the global region, or do you know?
It would go locally. And lots of times, depending, so your experience with the United Way Jackson would have been through your workplace campaign, which,
Yes.
we do a lot of those on a local level. They're very effective at, raising funds, but also really improving employee engagement, depending on what that employer wants to do. Some may want to dig into different areas or whatnot, but to answer your question, yeah, it stays local. Sometimes we do coordinate with, whether it might be Calgary or Red Deer, if there's organizations that have different locations in the province. In that case, we would usually figure out where is that donor's postal code, and then we'd make sure their donation goes back to the United Way in their area. So it's usually, if it's we usually do by postal code tracking if it's a larger kind of effort, but it would stay locally. And that's one thing where we always try to communicate. Yes, it's a global brand, but we're independently run. The money stays here in the community to help our neighbors who are most vulnerable.
And that's huge, and that is something I did not know at all, right? Because again, I look at it as this global brand. Where
Right.
I know we talked before the show, and I was like, I did not know that stuff went to the local community. I thought it was all on a country/world scale. And, forgive me for that, but I was like, it's not like UNICEF. I didn't know. Right. And that's my own, I guess, ignorance to not research it more.
I'll jump in. I think it goes both ways. I mean, I think there's definitely some there's accountability on both parts, for donors and prospects to do their research, but also, it's my job to have conversations with you too, Jackson, and let you know what we're about and be as, open and transparent as possible. Because there's so much information. It's only so much research you can do. So the easier I can make it on you and other people, then the better we're off for it. So, but yeah, when we're, speaking of, talking locally, we, we're all about partnerships, right? And local partnerships. So, we work with, many different partners in different sectors to try to catalyze change on a local level. So that includes, over 50 local nonprofits who we call funded partners. So we support them, whether it's with funds or also with coordinating efforts to better deliver their services in a more effective manner or efficient manner. But we also do a lot of the other outreach parts, working with organizations that want to give back on a local level, and also try to provide value as much as we can. So, employee engagement is huge. Education is massive. The issues that we're talking about around poverty, it looks different for different people.
Yep.
So that might mean mental health struggles. It might mean addiction. It might mean domestic violence. It might mean unemployment. Can take a lot of different, it can look different. And, you know, our job is to really try to be conveners in bringing people together that want to make changes in those areas, and do as much as we can to provide a clear lens in educating people. Because the thing that I've learned in my work in this sector is some of these issues strike closer to home for more people than they maybe realize at first.
Yep.
And that's a big part of our responsibility, I feel, is trying to be proactive and bring that engagement and education out as much as we can.
No, and that's great. And, you know, like, especially in our province of, you know, Alberta, we're a very boom bust economy. And, you know, it does affect us differently. I guess than the rest of the country operates or is used to seeing things operate. And, you know, you watch the devastation that happens with, you know, our industries when they collapse and the job losses. Now compile that with a global pandemic and, you know, businesses going under. There's a lot that, you know, from a poverty perspective, that I don't think a lot of people realize, right? Because we all think that you're just going to keep getting work and we're just going to go back and everything's going to be good again, right? On that whole cycle that we run. So that's amazing if that's what we're trying to combat, right? So you said that you work with about 50 other non-for-profits or your partners. So how does that work? What's the process for the other non-for-profits to work with you?
Right. So, as I mentioned, we focus on poverty, and there's really three particular areas we try to really focus on when we look at this, because it's one of those words like, you know, community or war. What does that really mean? So we kind of break it down into three areas. One is break the cycle. Another is provide a safety net, and three is lift people out. So it looks a little different. So break the cycle, that really focuses on working with children, you know, childhood, you know, interventions that we can provide to ensure kids have a healthy, safe upbringing in their households. If they're currently experiencing poverty or if their families are at risk of experiencing poverty, what are the partners that are doing work in the community that we can support who can help this break the cycle part of it? So that really focuses again on supporting families with parenting support, early learning development, ensuring school-age children have the best supports in place to make sure they can graduate high school. That is huge. Not graduating high school is a big, it can be a huge determinant in whether you're going to experience poverty in your life or not. So we have the data to support that. So we will work with organizations that have programs in place that can help address that issue. The provide a safety net, you just mentioned a whole bunch of things that can go sideways quickly for people. Job loss, you probably see this in your world, get hurt on the job site. You know, you go through a divorce, go through a breakup, loved one dies suddenly, all these curveballs that can happen to anyone. And they do, because I've met many people who that was the straw that broke the camel's back, why they ended up, you know, struggling with homelessness. Wasn't their fault. They just had a curveball come their way. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. But our provide a safety net angle is really, what are the supports people need when life throws them a curveball? So if it's food security, mental health supports, you know, one of our big collaborations we work on, which is big effort, is our community mental health action plan. So I talk about our efforts to try to bring people together to tackle a big issue. Mental health is massive. It was big.
Only get bigger, right? Like,
exactly. It was big before COVID. It's going to get even bigger here. So we want to make sure we have concerted efforts to make sure we can provide that kind of support for people who need that service and can access it as easily as possible. And then the third one is lifting people out. So someone who might be struggling with, in the cycle of poverty, struggling with homelessness, what have you. I've met countless people who are struggling with homelessness in my life for my work in this industry. I can tell you most of the time you get into it a lot quicker than you can get out of it. It's typically a grind, and it requires a lot of collaborative efforts. And we put a lot of attention in making sure we provide the supports needed to help lift people out. So that might be employment readiness services that we can help support and offer our support to. Financial literacy, again, another big indicator of someone who might be at risk of struggling with poverty. So we do a lot of work to help address urgent needs, but we also do a lot of work to ensure that we can get ahead of things so we can be proactive in it as well. So those are, when we work with our funded partners, that's how it kind of works. Can we work together on addressing something, these three areas related to poverty?
Yeah, and that's great, because I guess that's like any other business is we can't do everything ourselves, right? So if you can rely on specializing in one form or another, that can help us distribute I guess I don't want to say the burden, but the implementation aspect of getting people help. That's pretty amazing. So we were talking about this earlier, some stats. So from what I'm looking at, there's like 23,000 non-for-profits in Alberta. Right. It says 40% have charitable status. When people are looking to give back, that's overwhelming. And I know I've spent 2 years looking at, okay, how do me as a business owner, how do I give back to my community? And how do I pick and choose? Because now it just feels like, but that's overwhelming. And every one of them is a good cause in some way or another, right? They just, some impact us, some don't. What kind of guidance can you give people, whether it's, the United Way, you have so much to offer. But how can you guide people to maybe vet the non-for-profit they're trying to support, or pick that cause that the money is actually going to go to the cause, if that makes sense. So like, I know I read into reports on things that I wanted to give back to over the years, and then I find an article where a board of directors takes X amount, right? And maybe 10 cents on the dollar goes to the actual cause. Or you look at like the breast cancer awareness in the NFL and the multiple millions of dollars that it takes in, but then, the small percentage that actually goes to breast cancer because of the machine that runs it, all the operations and all this stuff that, takes up 90% of that income.
Right.
So I guess this is a multiple question. How is the United Way in that for, transparency of funds to, your initiatives, and how do people vet non-for-profits they're trying to support?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think more people are becoming a lot more demanding of transparency, and it's a good thing. To answer, how do you vet it? I mean, it really kind of depends on, in my opinion, like what do you value most? Some people want to know the statistics. So I want to know exactly how much of every dollar I donate is going to the cause I want, the cause that you're saying you help with. Other people are more, I think more anecdotal. Tell me some awesome stories, some success stories you've had. And they want to see that. So I think it's a bit of a combination that you can do it. But so to answer the transparency question on the United Way, so we're consistently rated as, so the United Way of Alberta Capital Region, the one that I work for. So we're rated independently from other United Ways. So
Okay.
just to be clear about that. And we're consistently given a very high rating as far as our, I guess, cost efficiency,
Okay.
so to speak. So I think in 2019, I believe we were given an A or A plus rating by the, I believe it's Charity Intelligence, is sort of the charity watchdog, for lack of a better term. And that's
for profits.
yeah. But you know, it's good to have those things in place because it helps, you know, maintain accountability and whatnot, and make sure that you're being as open, you're being transparent with those who are supporting you. That's really where it comes down to. That builds trust, and we can't do this work without trust. So it's a good measure to have in place. So for our local United Way, we're rated very high on cost efficiency. We're always in the top 100. I'm not sure what our current exact ranking was in 2019, but I would also
100 out of 23,000 is pretty good.
well, I think that's across Canada, so it'll be even more than that. So yeah, but so I mean, it's great. So I mean, for our organization, we do an excellent job in that, and we always have our, you know, our people can go look at our financials right now. They're always on our website. Yep. But I would also encourage folks, because I've got this question a lot, and it's a great question to ask. I would also encourage people to do the research into looking at the money that goes to the front lines. What is that doing? And I want to know the impact of that money too. Yep. So, you know, some of it has to go to operating costs and admin, because otherwise it's really hard to deliver a great service. But also, you know, what kind of impact is my money making, or my investments making in the community? And that's where we always try to do a really good job at, not only are we cost efficient, you know, to answer that question, but here's the impact that the donation is making in the community on the local level, which I think a lot of people are really interested in wanting to know that as well. Is it just going into the air, or what's it doing? So we, you know, we actually have a little tool on our website. I think it's called an impact calculator. So you can, if you're thinking of giving, you know, $10, $100, whatever, you can throw it right in there, and then it'll give you an example of the kind of impact it has. So it's like X number of school bags for kids, you know, in need of school supplies, and mental health counseling hours, what have you. So yeah, so I mean, bit of a long-winded answer, but there's ways that you can find that information.
That's fair.
I'm matching you step for step here. Yeah, there's ways you can find out the data. Yep. So if someone's interested in that, I mean, there's ways you can do that. But I would also encourage people not to let that be the be all end all, because there's a lot of other measurements that could give you an idea of whether it's you know, something you want to help support or not. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, do you believe in it or not? And not everyone's going to believe in the cause, and that's okay. If it resonates with you, then fantastic. Do some digging, get to know the people in the organization, yeah, and go from there. So
no, and that's fair. And you know, again, that money aspect can't be the be all end all. Like everything, you still do need to put money into operation costs. Like, yes, people volunteer and people give their time, and but there's still a cost associated with everything you do, right? So I think people do have to remember that. And it's more of the, are you trying to be good and make a profit, or are you just trying to operate and do good? Like, there's that kind of balance, right?
Right.
And it's a moral thing. So yeah, 2,300 non-for-profits. For anyone listening, I guess the easy way is do your research, and there is resources that you can look at, right? And if they're not transparent, that would just be a red flag for me to begin with, right?
Yep. Or just reach out if, you know, I would just reach out directly, and I've encouraged people to do that. It's if there's a specific cause that speaks to you, reach out, get to know them, you know, and and then go from there. And I mean, and you bring up the 23,000 number. I mean, I think that's another strength of our United Way is we do a lot of work in ensuring that the dollars that we raise are invested the most efficiently as possible in the community to have the greatest impact and go the furthest, go as far as we can, as far as we can take it. Because we've done so much work in building those relationships and knowing that these are the three kind of areas that are really going to move the needle on ending poverty. We've done a lot. We've kind of done a lot of that work ahead of time. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, obviously be diligent as a donor. Do find out that information, but also reach out and try to make those relationships as well. Make that part of the process.
Fair enough. I like that. So, okay, let's talk about giving back then as individual or as a small business. Let's talk about how businesses can help if they want to partake in some of your programs to, be with United Way or help the United Way or help fight poverty. What's the process there?
The process, honestly, it varies depending on the business. It's really, what are they most passionate about? What are their employees passionate about? What are the values of that business? It's always amazing how many different organizations that look fairly similar on paper have very different passions and ways they want to get involved. So we really try to build relationships with organizations that looking to give back, whether it's through their time, volunteer time, their talents, if it's in-kind services or their or financial resources as well. But I mean, a big thing we try to make a part of it is let's make sure that we're doing as much as we can to help you along the way as well. So we've talked about our workplace campaigns. That's something that we put a lot of time and effort into, which helps organizations give back to the local community through United Way, but also affords us the opportunity to engage more with their employees. If there's things around mental health that employees want to know more about, we can arrange opportunities to improve the knowledge around mental health in the community on how to get more engaged in that area. If it's around food security, if it's around supporting kids in the community, we can be very adaptive and nimble in that way to making experiences work for different businesses. You mentioned small business as well. You were recently on one of our roundtables, right? That we try to engage with small businesses and find out what are their challenges and what are the opportunities they want to work on look like, and how can United Way help support them, and really try to make it a relationship, right? I think that's one of the things is that we really try to be proactive in making sure that this isn't a one-way street.
Yep.
We can give back as much as you can. It just might look a little different, but it still adds value. So So I'll leave it there. If you have a follow-up question, I could go from there.
So that's good that you can be adaptive to, I guess, suit whatever need the business has, right? Like, so you can sit down, there's probably a consulting phase on, okay, this is what we do and this is who we try to help and how we try to help. And these are kind of like the programs that we can set up to work with you. That's cool. I get that. Most people, like when I think of donations, I think of a nominal fee, right? Yeah, here's money, right? But you talk about like in-kind service and donation time or volunteer time, right? So that is something that I think people, again, or I'm just speaking for everyone and it's just me, but
you're speaking for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I speak for all 4 people that watch. When we think of donating, we also you forget about the knowledge that you might be able to give, or just even the time to help facilitate some of these programs, right? So it doesn't have to be money, and I think that kind of gets lost sometimes. because you just think, oh, I need to give money. Well, no, you don't. You can give your time, you can give your expertise, and you can help any way you can. And that's great that you have those opportunities. You mentioned about educating employees.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's for mental health aspects or food security, can you talk about each of those? How can you help? Can you help in, like, if a company has 30 people and they're going to lay some people off, and these people now are on that verge of, they might not be able to pay their bills next month, or they might not be able to get groceries.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a program in there to help these people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Tell us about it, and how do they access it?
So I wouldn't say there's one specific program, but there's different resources that we can help connect workplaces with, whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, public agency, what have you, small business. So when it comes to, one of the collaboratives that we're a big part of is called 211. 211. 3 numbers. Very easy to remember. 211. And this is a very comprehensive information and referral network that is available to all Albertans, and that they really serve as kind of guideposts. And if you're struggling with mental health supports, I don't know how to provide my employees mental health supports, where I need some information. You can call them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can speak with one of the employees there, and they can help guide you and connect you to the services that can offer that help. So that's one example. And when COVID hit, the demand on their services went up extraordinarily, because a lot more people needed answers to questions that maybe they didn't have. But that's what 211 serves as, is a critical community resource to get people connected to community resources such as mental health. So that's one. I mean, another thing that we've done recently, and a lot of this came from feedback we were getting from small business owners, was I can't find resources that are mental health resources that are specific for a business owner. I look at, I have 8 employees. I'm trying my best to, be positive and be a support for them. Meanwhile, I am burning out. I can't really find anything that is, working for me. So we developed, and I'll have to send this to you after, Jackson, but we developed a resource, and a few other things. And I think it's called safely returning to the workplace. But within that are some specific resources that we've already vetted, that can help support small business owners with mental wellness, their own, and how do they support their employees as well. I mentioned the community mental health action plan. So I guess to answer your question, there's always, once we find out kind of where the challenges might be with an organization, then we can really get to work, be like, okay, this is important for these folks. This is important. How can we work together to bring those resources and bring that education to you and your staff so that it can make a difference? I mean, that's why we put a lot of effort into employee engagement and really trying to focus on how can we help improve staff morale. If we can help do that, it helps your business, it helps your organization. But a lot of it always begins with relationships and understanding how we can best be of service.
No, that's great. So when do these businesses already have to be in your ecosystem of some sort of program, or can they just reach out to you?
They can reach out. Absolutely. Perfect. Yep. And that's a big part of my job, right? Is to find out how can we help other organizations in the city, whether it's, pretty, a simple, whether it's a simple thing or where it's a lot more in depth. Let's find out. And I think that's one of the things that we try to communicate, is that we can bring a lot of value and a lot more supports than I think many people realize, especially at a time like now.
Yep. Well, absolutely. And, especially right now with the way things are with COVID and, people are sitting at home, they're uncertain, they get into, there's just so many mental health issues you can get into, like just depression, and you might still be going on to your day to day and still be working, but everything's changed. Right. So,
Right. Yeah,
and that whole,
exactly.
you just don't know what's happening or what you're going to do. What are some of the new initiatives you're working on right now to, I guess kind of work with the current situation? So people being at home, how can they help?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like a lot of places, we had to really adapt quickly and try to turn a lot of things virtual. One of the things that we heard from a lot of our, current partners that we work with and a lot of folks in the community is, how can I help, but I want to be safe at the same time? So what we've recently developed is called a DIY. I think it's DIY at home kits, but it's basically, we've developed about 8 or 9 different ways that people can still volunteer at home, and I believe the website is volunteerathome.ca.
Okay.
And basically, we give you 8 different ways that you can do DIY, do it yourself at kits, at home with your family, virtually with your team at work, by yourself, what have you, with your friends. And they're meant to help. The kits help address an identified need that is tremendously active and tremendously in need in the community. So whether it's hygiene kits, pencil case kits for kids going back to school next month, cards to seniors who might be more isolated than normal right now, notes to frontline workers to show our support, things of that nature.
Okay. That's awesome. Right.
Yeah,
So there's always a way, even when you're sitting at home on our couch, we can still be helping.
exactly.
No, that's great. And, especially with the time, everyone has to adapt. Right. So we have to adapt, or we just kind of fade away in everything we're doing, whether it's business, non-for-profits, or life. Right. If we're not, we're just not going to get off that couch. So
Yeah.
that's great that you guys have been thinking of that. And I'm sure as many industries are, right, on how they can keep moving forward. So that's good.
Yeah.
So you've been working in non-for-profits for the last 10 years,
Just
right?
coming up. I think it's just over 9 or something. I don't know.
Ends after a while.
Right? Yeah.
Jackson, how old are you? I don't know.
Just look at me. There
Yeah.
you go.
Start doing math. So, how long have you been with the United Way, and what were what got you into non-for-profit work? I guess let's start with that. Let's talk about that journey.
Sure. So I've been with the United Way. It'll be almost a year. So at the
Okay.
end of the month, it'll be a year. Before that, I worked for one of our funded partners, actually, in the community, called Boyle Street Community Services. How I got into nonprofit work, I was a service attendant at the U of A operating room. I was out of university, thought I might get into healthcare in some regard, so I just took that job. It was an amazing job. I think what made it extra amazing, like, it was exciting because it was a very unpredictable environment, which nonprofit world is. But I also really liked the constant patient interaction. Didn't know anyone, had basically a 10-minute window with every patient to get to know them, try to build some rapport. I really like that aspect of it. And then I kind of just had a stroke of luck that, Boyle Street was hiring, got in there as an outreach worker, and I spent over 4 years working as a street outreach worker. So it was my job to go proactively all over Edmonton to find folks who were currently experiencing homelessness, wherever they were living, camping, River Valley Park, back alleys, wherever, and build relationships with them and see how we could help them in any way. So that was a phenomenal experience of 4 years. And then got to know a lot of people, a lot of people's stories, and it really taught me that never, the whole like don't judge a book by its cover. It's such a cliche, but it really is. It's amazing people's stories of how they, what was, what their life was like, and the things that maybe happened, but just how amazingly resilient so many people are, given the struggles that they're going through. So that really got me, ingrained into doing everything I can to help support, those who are struggling with poverty in the city. And then met some great folks at United Way during my time at Boyle Street, and made the shift about a year ago, and it's been a fantastic experience so far. I still get to meet a lot of people, and I get to share some of the stories that I've learned early on. And it's really about meeting people where they're at and trying to, help them as much as we can. And it looks different from person to person, but that's why it really, as starts with the relationships.
Well, and that's such a unique, I guess, job, if you want to call it, or opportunity. From our busy day-to-days, you kind of just walk by people, right? Like a lot of us, especially in business, or even in life, you blatantly walk by some of these situations, and you're walking into them, right? So that's amazing. I know me and the girlfriend were out on the bike a couple weeks ago, and coming through the river valley, and then you come through where the ballpark is, and there's a whole tent city there.
Yeah.
Right now, right? And
there is. Yeah.
One of those things we just sat and talked about. We're like, holy crap! Like we didn't even know it was there, and just the weight of just even thinking of what's happening there or why everyone's there, it's uncomfortable, right? So I think that's why a lot of people, we choose not to. You put up your blinders, right? So for you going into that, that's amazing. Congratulations. When you go into those types of situations, tell me on some of the ways that you tried to help people. And I guess you definitely trust building. You definitely have to build a ton of trust, because I don't even, when people come to offer me things, they're like, hey, want this? I'm like, what's the catch? Right? Like, that's just our
exactly.
Human. So tell me kind of that process on how, I guess, a success story on how that process worked, if you have any, or
well, I mean, it's funny how many similarities there are in interactions, regardless of the content. I mean, you said how many people come to me and just say, here. Look, here's all the things I can offer you. And you're just like, works the same way. When I would, when I meet someone who was, homeless, I learned early on, it's not about, coming and saying, hey, I can solve all these problems. It's like, no, you got to start with relationship. You got to build trust. And sometimes that takes time. Sometimes that takes a couple days. Sometimes it took a couple years. And it's really about getting to know that person, getting to know, are they ready to look at some ways that maybe we can improve the quality of their life. But I mean, all the time, they have to be part of the process. You can never drag someone in a direction that maybe they're not ready to go at that time. And that's okay. It's okay. That's why it's meeting people, and it's meeting companies and workplaces where they're at. People are at different stages. So it's really focusing on that. And it's a success story. So there was a gentleman, I won't use his real name, I'll call him Tyler. But he was, I met him in the River Valley probably in 2012, 2013. And I must have gone and tried to have a conversation with him a dozen times, and it never really went well. But that was my fault, not his. I was coming into his space. And it wasn't until I met him away from his camp that we had a conversation, and I got to know him a little bit. And he was, 8 months, 9 months, less than a year before that, he owned his own business in Ontario. He had put both of his kids through college, paid off his house. Like on paper, he was. I'd like to be in that situation at his age. But yeah, unfortunately, his wife passed away suddenly, and that was his rock. And then his rock was no longer there to help to be that rock for him. And that's really when we talk about providing a safety net. And when life happened to Tyler. Fortunately, we were able to, develop a relationship, and we were able to, work on a few things. And, we got him some, connected with, a doctor, and got him the medical care that he needed, and some counseling. And, he did end up getting housed, which is great. But I mean, it's a process, right? It's like any new relationship between organizations or people. You meet people where they're at, and you try to be as valuable and as helpful as possible. It's also about, why you got to start with trust in the relationship is because it doesn't always go smoothly uphill. Sometimes there's a whole bunch of that. So, but if you have that trust and relationship built early on, then you can still stick together once if things go sideways a bit. So, yeah, that's the one that comes to mind. And I mean, I've worked with many people throughout the years who have same kinds of stories, and there's a lot of people working in the city that do that and similar work every day. And we're lucky enough to be a part of supporting their work through United Way, because it's not easy work. It's messy, but it's worth it. It's always worth it.
Fair enough. I know that it's hard to pick one thing, and sorry to put you on the spot there, because I'm like, sure, you work with probably hundreds of people, but
it's a good question.
Okay, I got one for you. What's the most important thing you learned in your life and business? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life like after learning it? Very generic or broad. But,
I'm glad you put it up on the screen there. What's the most important thing you've learned in your life or business? What was your life like before learning? What was your life like after it? I think really like just, I don't know, because you threw this to me before, and I was struggling with it. I don't know if, you know what, I think just be true to yourself, be yourself. I think people, always appreciate when you're genuine and authentic, and not trying to be anyone other than yourself. I learned that real early on working in nonprofit. You're working with very real issues that you're trying to help address, and there really wasn't any room to be inauthentic or disingenuous. So always be genuine, always just be yourself. Life like before learning it. I mean, I think that's it. Like maybe you feel like you have to be something other than yourself in order to do what you want to do or to reach a level that you want to reach. And I don't think that's the case at all. So life like after learning it, always be true to your values, stick to your values. And I think, it'll always serve you well.
That's fair, man. I know that's you're like, wait, what? And
I'm gonna wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, what did I just say? Why didn't I just say this instead?
I go like, there's too many. What's the most important thing? Always be learning and admit when you're wrong.
Is that your answer to that? I like that.
Yeah, because you know what? Like there's too many things that could go into that, right? Like, I like to say, I've always had imposter syndrome, no matter what as you go and progress through your career. Right. And it doesn't matter how educated or prepared or something I'm going into a situation, there's part of me that feels like I don't belong. Right. And it's like, I'm like, okay, someone's going to be judging me. But then it comes back into being genuine, like you said, because I'm like, well, I'm also me. So I'm just going to be me. And if I screw up, I'll own that I screwed up. Hey, yeah, no, my bad. Right? It's so much easier.
And you know how many like allies you'll make by having that approach? Because
Yeah.
you're just so much more real.
Yeah.
People will just be like, I like how he said he screwed up. I like
Yeah.
how he owned it.
It's not
Yeah.
sure if you're like, if you walk in, it's like, oh, I screwed up again today. Well, okay, well, we got
Yeah. Don't do it 2 days in a row, but yeah.
Yeah. But you know, just I like that. I like that answer, being genuine, because we're all people, right? And
That's it.
once you admit that, like same with this, when I started this show, I was so nervous. And I was like, what happens if I screw up? And then I realized I don't care. It's like, oh,
There you
yeah,
go.
everyone screws up. We're still human. It doesn't matter. Right. So
Yeah.
once you just get past that and you accept it, you go, oh, yeah, my life's way easier now.
Yeah. And honestly, like kudos to you for starting this. This is I was nervous before coming on, but this has been the best part of my week. This is fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's great when it's just conversation.
Right? Yes, they're important.
I'm going to hit you with one more question before we go.
Okay.
And might not be the best timed one, but one thing that is misunderstood in your career with non-for-profits. What anything come to mind when you say, "Oh, I work for a non-for-profit"? What do they think you do? I picture one of those memes,
Mm-hmm.
What I think I do, what my parents think I do, what society thinks I do.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before, that people think of charities, it's like, well, I'll give to charity, and it's a one-way street.
Yep.
I think, just to reiterate my earlier point, I think it's underestimated how much value nonprofits and charities can bring donors, volunteers, the general community, beyond just the clients who might be accessing those resources and services you provide. I think nonprofits and charities, in my mind, really can be seen as catalysts for, maybe your greater social purpose that maybe you can't accomplish in your day-to-day life or your current job. I think they're an outlet for a lot of good that can be done. I've seen that, but I think a lot of time, this is where I really think it's, responsibility of us who work in the industry to make sure that gets communicated and that is demonstrated. Yes, we fundraise. Every charity needs money to keep their services going. It's, to create transformational change, it comes, it always comes with a price. But there's a lot more value that I think that nonprofits can provide than I think most people understand. And I think from a personal perspective, I dealt with this a lot. Not so much anymore, but I know a lot of my colleagues in my previous job, would shares, those that work in nonprofits, it's a stepping stone to working in another sector, another industry or something, right?
Okay.
And I find that that is not typically the case. It happens, but the overwhelming majority of the folks that I've worked with in this industry do it because they want to be there, because they believe in the cause, they believe in, that's what they want their career to be. They love the work. I think that's maybe two misperceptions that maybe people have. Maybe they don't, but that's just the ones I've come across.
Fair enough. I will accept that answer.
All right. As long as you accept it.
I don't care. Awesome, Brent. Well, you know what? Thank you for taking the last hour to sit and talk with me and, educate me at least more on what the United Way is and, how it gives back, because that was eye-opening for me, right? Again, I thought of it just as this global entity and not as like a local charity. So even in that, that's huge. Thank you for all the things that you do for Edmonton, and what you're trying to accomplish is amazing. What I'm going to ask you before we go is to just kind of shout out the website so people can find you and find information on you. And then, I'll put that in the show notes after for all these resources that we talked about. I'll put up in the notes so, people can look at them and try to find them if they need them later.
Sure.
So how'd they get a hold of you?
Well, first of all, thank you again for inviting me on. This was a pleasure and a privilege. This was a fantastic last hour. So thank you for everything you do to make conversations like this possible. So kudos to you. So our website is myunitedway.ca.
Okay.
Tons of resources up there. I mentioned the volunteer at home kits. So volunteerathome.ca is how you can find out information on that. And people want to connect with me, they can connect with me on LinkedIn is great, or my number is 780-443-8364. I don't know if you do phone numbers or not, but there's my office line.
In the internet now, so
it's the office line, not my cell number. So
fair enough. Random text messages coming in.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to change my phone number now.
Yeah. All right, Brent, thank you very much, man. I appreciate your time, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Jackson. Take care.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did, like always, any feedback is greatly appreciated. I will put up Brent and the United Way's contact information in the show notes after. And yeah, appreciate your time. And like always, if you can like us and follow us on social media, it's greatly appreciated. Have a great rest of your day.